Gina, Jinwoo's little sister, starts searching for him because it's time for her parent-teacher conference, and he completely forgot about it. Although she's used to her big brother's unpredictable behavior, she can't help but express her frustration. He still manages to make it to the conference, making it just in time. As Gina walks with Jinwoo to the conference room, she teasingly offers to set him up with someone, as he's been so busy with his work. But Jinwoo, pinching her cheek. The parent-teacher conference begins, and Jinwoo hears the good news that his sister is doing great in school and is on track to enter medical school, which brings a smile to his face. But the mood shifts quickly when her teacher raises a concerning where the teacher suggests Gina might become a hunter if she awakens abilities. Jinwoo firmly opposes the idea. The teacher asks for another favor. Afterward, Jinwoo visits his sister's friend, Song-yi, to discuss her future. Song-yi recognizes Jinwoo as Gina's brother and explains that being an E-rank hunter is her only way to survive. Frustrated, she tells Jinwoo that if he's there to lecture her, he should leave. Jinwoo clarifies that he only wants to understand her situation. Meanwhile, S-rank hunter Hwang Dong-soo arrives in Korea, met by Woo Jin-chul. Dong-soo makes it clear he won't stay long, and Jin-chul wonders if it's connected to certain people. Dong-soo hints at dealing with E and D-rank hunters in a dungeon, warning Jin-chul not to interfere. In a separate meeting, S-rank hunter Jong-in informs President Gun-hee about flying monsters found in the sea. Gun-hee decides to investigate further, recognizing the threat they could pose.
Back to Jinwoo, who is now on a mission at a Seagate site.
Preparing for a dangerous dungeon raid with an assault team of 6 hunters. The team is led by Kim Chul, an A-rank tanker hunter, and includes a mix of B and C-ranked hunters. As they prepare to enter the dungeon, Jinwoo and his ally, Sun-yi, join the team, making it a 10-member operation. But just as they're about to enter the dungeon, something unexpected happens. A red gate suddenly appears. A red gate is a type of dungeon that's different from regular gates, as it creates a direct link between the hunters and the monsters within, cutting them off from the outside world. The red gate sucks everyone in, leaving only An and Hyun behind, who immediately contact the team inside. Jinwoo explains that the red gate leads to a kind of dungeon where time passes differently. 1 day inside is equivalent to 1 hour outside. They'll only be able to escape if they defeat the boss or if the dungeon collapses on its. As they traverse the snowy landscape, an icy arrow suddenly flies towards Sun-yi. But Jinwoo catches the arrow barehanded, saving her life. C-rank hunters is killed instantly by the arrow. Jinwoo quickly identifies the attackers. Ice elves, known for their lethal, precise attacks and their affinity for ice magic. These ice elves are incredibly dangerous, and Jinwoo warns everyone about their brutal methods of combat. At this point, Kim Chul, being the highest-ranked hunter on the team, asserts his authority and decides to split the group into 2 teams in order to maximize their chances of survival. However, in a selfish move, he tells the lower-ranked hunters, C and B ranks, that they're not worthy to join his team. Kim Chul dismisses them as deadweight, showing his true nature as a ruthless and arrogant leader. One of the B-ranked hunters, Park Hee-jin, shocks everyone by choosing to join Jinwoo's team, despite Kim Chul's group supposedly being the safer option. Hee-jin has seen Jinwoo's abilities firsthand and knows he has an edge over the others, even without the traditional hierarchy of hunter ranks. As the 2 groups split up, with Kim Chul's team heading east and Jinwoo leading his group into the forest, the situation only grows more dangerous. Kim Chul's group notices the telltale signs of an ice bear's presence when they spot claw marks on the trees. Kim Chul scoffs at the idea of the lower-ranked hunters being able to survive an encounter with an ice bear, which is known for its strength and ferocity. But Jinwoo, ever confident, suggests that the ice bear's territory is likely clear of any intelligent creatures, making it a safer path for his group to take. Jinwoo's group ventures deeper into the forest. To the surprise of everyone, Jinwoo pulls out warm coats from his inventory, showcasing his incredible powers yet again. He instructs everyone to stay out of his way. Jinwoo, leading his group deeper into the portal, tells Song-yi that since he brought her along, he'll take responsibility for her well-being. He warns the others not to ask questions or demand explanations. As they press forward, a massive ice bear suddenly appears, blocking their path. Meanwhile, outside the Red Gate, Hunter Baek Yunho and Sungmin are watching from a distance. Sungmin mentions that Jinwoo is inside the red portal, but remains unclear if he's had his second awakening. Baek is concerned, as he's unsure of what to make of the situation. Before they can discuss further, Hwang Dong-soo arrives at the entrance, clearly frustrated. He mutters that with the red portal sealing them in, he won't be able to reach Jinwoo and might not make it out himself. Inside the portal, Jinwoo and his group continue their fight with the ice bears. These red portals grant much more experience than ordinary ones. However, even with his newfound strength, Jinwoo remains vigilant. Back in Jinwoo's group, as they feast on the tender meat of the ice bears, Jinwoo is already thinking ahead. He's determined to locate the ice bear's lair and take down the source of the problem. Moving deeper into the cave, he notices something strange. Several pairs of eyes are watching him from the darkness. Knowing that danger is near, Jinwoo steers his group forward, ready to confront whatever comes next. With Jinwoo's command, the Shadow Soldiers begin their attack, while Jinwoo himself stands at the ready, taking on the ice bear directly. The fight is fierce, and Jinwoo's Shadow Soldiers work in tandem with him. But the battle drags on, and his mana starts to deplete. As the fight continues, Jinwoo's mana runs dangerously low, but the ice bear remains standing. The Shadow Soldiers are eventually all defeated, but the true test begins when a massive, mohawked ice bear boss enters the fray. The colossal creature quickly wipes out Jinwoo's remaining Shadow Soldiers, and all of his mana is completely drained. Despite the dire situation, Jinwoo remains calm and calls upon Igris, his elite Shadow Soldier, to finish the fight. Igris, wielding his sword, displays his unmatched combat skills, swiftly dispatching the ice bear boss with precision and speed. With one final strike, Igris decapitates the massive creature, bringing an end to the battle. As Jinwoo's group celebrates their victory, Kim Chul's team faces a far worse fate. They're being overwhelmed by the Ice Elves. But the Ice Elves are closing in, and the situation looks grim. In the shadows, the leader of the Ice Elves, a dark, terrifying figure, watches Kim Chul with malicious intent. We see Jinwoo standing victorious over the Death Bears, showcasing his immense power as a necromancer. With a simple command to rise, Shadow Bears emerge from the corpses, seamlessly joining Jinwoo's ever-growing Shadow Army. Outside the portal, Sang explains that the strike force has been trapped inside for 3 hours, which translates to about 3 days in the portal's distorted time. Dong-soo halts his departure, demanding to know why Jinwoo was associating with the White Tiger Guild. Sang casually explains that Jinwoo is merely an acquaintance who wanted to observe a C-rank mission. While Sang feels relieved, Dong-soo shocks everyone by suddenly choking him. At that moment, Baek steps forward, transforming, and tells Dong-soo to stop. Dong-soo is impressed when Jin Chul intervenes, managing to stop the escalating S-rank fight. Jin Chul humbly admits that the only reason his arms remain intact is that the 2 S-rank hunters restrained themselves at the last moment. Jin Chul reassures Dong-soo that Jinwoo is just an E-rank hunter, emphasizing that he re-evaluated Jinwoo 2 months ago and found no reason to believe otherwise. Before the conversation can continue, Dong-soo is called away, muttering that Jinwoo is lucky. Sang watches him leave, reflecting on how no one truly grasps the depth of Jinwoo's power. Inside the portal, Kim Chul feels relieved after escaping the elves, but his relief turns to horror when he stumbles upon the mangled corpses of the Death Bears. The sight terrifies him, and he wonders how the E-ranks he abandoned could possibly be responsible. Jinwoo's group sits around a fire, trying to stay warm. Their peace is shattered when Kim Chul storms in, furious to see these weaklings alive and thriving. Dressed in weather gear and surrounded by blankets and food, they're in much better shape than his own group. Kim Chul accuses them of hoarding supplies, claiming his team died because they lacked proper equipment. Blinded by anger, he demands to know who was hiding the gear. However, before Kim Chul can act, Jinwoo suddenly appears and overpowers him. The group is stunned by their leader's unexpected return. Jinwoo calls out to the hidden presence, stating that their aura is far too strong to go unnoticed, and orders them to drop their stealth. In response, the ice elves reveal themselves. Jinwoo then speaks fluently in the language of the magic beasts, surprising himself. The elven leader explains their presence. Before the leader can finish, Jinwoo swiftly chops off the challenger's head. The leader is amused by this brutality, but Jinwoo is uninterested in entertaining him and immediately launches an attack. The leader defends himself skillfully, and Jinwoo realizes this opponent won't go down easily. The leader remarks that Jinwoo isn't human and questions why he's pretending to be. Jinwoo is confused, but the leader's laugh suggests he knows something Jinwoo doesn't. He explains that elves are driven by a voice in their minds commanding them to kill humans, but strangely, they don't hear it when it comes to Jinwoo. This revelation makes Jinwoo suspicious, wondering if the elves' silence toward him is connected to his system directives. The leader speculates that Jinwoo might not be entirely human and encourages him to hand over the other humans. But Jinwoo demands to know why the elves are targeting humans at all. Jinwoo refuses to comply. Jinwoo is undeterred and questions why the leader is so confident. He then summons a shadow army, leaving the others to watch in disbelief. The elven leader dismisses Jinwoo's forces as a waste of time, but Jinwoo presses for a fight. The two sides engage in a brutal battle. The humans with Jinwoo attempt to flee, but elven archers target them. Jinwoo eliminates the archers with ease. Despite his prowess, Jinwoo realizes the elves are stronger than he anticipated and dealing significant damage. While Jinwoo's shadow is technically immortal, regenerating his troops costs magic power, which is finite. He concludes that even worse, the elven leader is undeniably stronger than him. The leader, Barca, engages Jinwoo directly. Jinwoo quickly assesses the situation and realizes his regular soldiers won't suffice, needing a stronger force to match Barca's power. Jinwoo unleashes a massive meteor, catching Barca off guard. Meanwhile, Kim Chul regains consciousness, seething with anger. He curses Jinwoo again, gripping his sword tightly, determined to take him down. As Barca battles Jinwoo's magic soldiers, Kim Chul uses the chaos to make his move. However, Jinwoo, having anticipated this, orders Igris to create a smoke screen. Igris swiftly ends Kim Chul's life, and Jinwoo commands him to rise, turning him into a shadow soldier. Barca mocks Jinwoo's forces as a waste of time, but his confidence falters when a towering new shadow soldier, Iron, emerges to confront him. Barca assesses Iron, noting its lack of agility but immense durability. Igris is ready for battle. As Iron holds his ground, Barca declares the fight lacks challenge and demands Jinwoo and Igris join the fray. His frustration grows as Iron's persistent screams echo throughout the fight. Barca decides to deal with Iron first, but Iron proves a formidable tank. Barca dodges Igris' strikes, but is caught off guard when Jinwoo lands a stab. Impressed, Jinwoo notes that Barca avoids a fatal wound. Barca, remembering his army, turns to see Jinwoo's shadow army has wiped out his entire clan. As Jinwoo throws his dagger, Barca mocks him, calling him a fool. Barca barely blocks it, but his weapon is destroyed in the process. Jinwoo seizes the moment, ordering Iron to restrain Barca. Barca becomes the target of a devastating fire attack. Despite the strike, Barca isn't finished. Jinwoo counters, silencing him once and for all. The battle is over as Barca lies lifeless on the ground, and Jinwoo reprimands Iron for his overzealousness. The ground trembles, but Iron ensures their victory is absolute. Jinwoo silently hopes Iron's behavior won't become a recurring issue. The group breathes a collective sigh of relief. Jinwoo calmly tells them it's time to leave. Outside the portal, Sang tells Beck it's time to return, as a week has passed and survival chances are slim. But Beck refuses, unwilling to abandon his guild member. The portal opens, and Beck assumes Kim Chul is emerging, but is stunned to see Jinwoo, alive and unscathed. Sang's confidence proves correct. The gate closes, and Beck, horrified, wonders about Kim Chul's fate. He learns only the low-ranked hunter survived, prompting questions about what transpired inside. Beck approaches Jinwoo, who, visibly exhausted, tells him to direct his questions to someone in his guild. Beck is taken aback, but realizes Jinwoo saved the two survivors. Beck apologizes for his earlier demeanor. Later, Jinwoo drops saying he at her home. She thanks him and looks forward to seeing him again. Jinwoo reflects on the ordeal, disappointed to have earned only a single dagger for his efforts. He concludes that Barca must have been too high-level for better rewards and remembers failing to raise Barca as an immortal soldier the next day. Jinwoo takes a breath, reflecting on his next goal, that then Jinwoo meets Leo, who shocks him with his flashy, over-the-top attire. Seeing how casually Jinwoo and Sang interact, Leo becomes suspicious. When Jinwoo asks if Sang got any sleep, Leo misinterprets the moment and, concerned, reminds Jinwoo that Sang is underage. Jinwoo brushes it off, unaware of Leo's misunderstanding, which only heightens Leo's concern.
The episode kicks off with a scene from a dungeon, where we find Jinho once again. Jinho is watching in amazement as Jinwoo's shadow soldiers do all the heavy lifting. He's absolutely floored when he notices these powerful soldiers, and Jinwoo casually remarks, "Oh yeah, I didn't show you these guys before." Jinwoo mentions that they are part of his skill set. Jinho, eager to help out, sits down to start collecting the gems himself. However, a soldier approaches him, handing over some of the gems. Jinho smiles and thanks the soldier, appreciating the teamwork. At this point, the scene cuts to a destroyed boat. The ship is wrecked, and all the soldiers aboard are dead, except for one survivor who is left terrified. A massive figure emerges from the wreckage. At first, the survivor believes this towering figure is a magical beast, but to his shock, it's simply a human. This encounter is an eerie foreshadowing of things to come. Back to the main action. Jinwoo and Jinho's raid mission proceeds without much trouble. Afterward, they take a moment to celebrate their success. With a few drinks and a hearty meal, they bask in the satisfaction of completing 19 quests, something Jinho is especially excited about. The completion of these missions is a crucial step for Jinho in establishing his guild, with Jinwoo providing the much-needed assistance. This goal remains central to their partnership. During their celebration, Jinho turns to Jinwoo and asks about his future plans. Jinwoo responds cryptically, saying that he'll be unreachable for a while as he heads off somewhere. Jinho opens up about his relationship with his older brother, revealing that they've never had a meaningful conversation, and that his brother doesn't even like him. Jinho wishes that Jinwoo were his brother instead, and Jinwoo, with a playful grin, decides to take him up on that offer. "Alright then," he says, "from today you're my little bro." Jinho, thrilled by the gesture, insists that they eat more meat to celebrate their new brotherhood. Meanwhile, a different scene plays out in a jail cell. A foreign hunter is being held captive, claiming that he was trapped in a gate for 10 years before recently emerging from a new gate that opened near the US. His inability to speak English and his strange mannerisms raise suspicions among the authorities, who suspect that he might be a humanoid beast or even a magical beast in human form. To investigate further, they call in an S-rank hunter named Mr. Dong-soo, whose real name is revealed to be Sang Tae-yun. The next morning, Jinwoo prepares for his trip. His sister, Jinna, teases him about where he's going and who he's going with. She jokingly asks if he has a girlfriend, but Jinwoo laughs it off, saying he's just going on a trip with a friend. He heads off to the Dean Castle, the same castle Sarba introduced him to in the past. When Jinwoo first visited the castle, his level was only 20, but now his level has nearly tripled. Confident in his abilities, Jinwoo decides he's ready to take on the boss this time. Upon entering, he receives a quest notification that requires him to collect 10,000 demon souls. Without hesitation, he dives into the dungeon, surrounded by countless demons. While Jinwoo faces off with demons, Jinho visits his father. Their conversation turns to the guild, and Jinho's father asks whether he intends to take over the family guild. Jinho tries to explain that his older brother plans to bring in an outsider as guild master, which he believes could endanger the family's legacy. Jinho's father mentions Jinwoo, recalling his involvement in the Double Dungeon incident, the White Tiger Guild's Red Gate crisis, and how he saved survivors during the incident. With Jinwoo's help, Jinho managed to obtain his guild master license. Jinho asks again for his father's permission to take over the guild, but his father offers a deal. "On one condition," he says. "You must recruit Jinwoo to join our guild." Confidently, Jinho promises that he can get Jinwoo to join. Back at the Demon Castle, Jinwoo is busy wiping out demons but quickly notices something odd. He cannot extract their souls. However, he stumbles upon a gate pass, which is an entry permit for moving to the second floor. Realizing the distance, Jinwoo summons his Ice Bear boss to help him get to the gate. The Ice Bear's strength is impressive, and Jinwoo names it Tank for its tank-like abilities. Meanwhile, we cut to a scene with Cha-Hain. She's coming out of a swimming pool, and as usual, everyone around her is struck by her beauty. However, Cha appears tense, recalling a conversation with Choi Jong-in. She questions why they aren't revealing the red eyes and growing wings of magical beasts to the public. Choi reassures her that they need to focus on becoming stronger and building their guild to be the country's best. For now, they must stay silent about the looming threat. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo reflects on his initial expectation of the dungeon, assuming it was an S-rank level, only to find that most of the demons here are only upper B rank. He presses on, continuing to collect gate passes and clearing more floors. As he advances, he realizes that the dungeon might have 100 floors, similar to the original tower. He continues pushing forward, though his supplies are running low, and he needs to head back home soon as he promised his sister he'd return in a week. After many trials, Jinwoo finally collects the 10,000 demon souls and reaches the 49th floor. To ascend to the 50th floor, he must face the Demon King Ash Vulcan, who rules the lower floors. Meanwhile, 2 representatives from the White Tiger Guild have come to recruit Jinwoo, but they find that Jinwoo isn't home. They approach his sister Gina, and learn that Jinwoo's location is still in the city. They track his last known location, which was right in the middle of the city. At this point, Jinwoo tells his shadow army to handle the demons while he focuses on taking down the boss. His shadow army moves into action, with Igris leading the charge. Jinwoo notices that his soldiers have become more powerful, with their numbers, intelligence, and magic abilities all improving. But just when things seem to be going well, the boss, Ash Vulcan, teleports to the battlefield, catching everyone off guard. Even Igris is shocked by the boss's sudden appearance. The Demon King attacks with lightning speed, and Jinwoo is forced to block its attacks with his iron shield. Despite the shield's strength, the Demon King's relentless assault tests Jinwoo's limits. He quickly realizes that he needs to target the smaller head on the Demon King's body to defeat it, but stopping its erratic movements proves difficult. The battle intensifies, with Jinwoo using his strategy to lure the boss into a building. The fight scenes are intense, and the action is nothing short of spectacular. Meanwhile, we cut to Sang and Dong Su, who are engaged in a heated conversation. Dong Su mocks Sang, asking if magic beasts can really take human form. Sang responds calmly, telling him he can prove it with a DNA test if he wants. Dong Su, tired of the conversation, dismisses him, but Sang presses on, asking how much humanity really knows about gates and magic beasts. He warns that the gates and beasts are simply harbingers of a much greater disaster. Dong Su scoffs at this, but Sang's words carry weight. The two engage in a tense standoff, and Dong Su's frustration builds. Even magic beasts like you have human names? You have a family, right? Do you remember your child's name? Sang calmly answers, Jinwoo. Dango realizes Sang is his father. Sang asks, why the murderous intent? Dango growls, I won't answer. Sang presses, tell me. Dango snarls, your son's dead. Say your last words to him in hell. The tension builds as both unleash their auras. Finally, back in the dungeon, Jinwoo has defeated the 50th floor boss and continues his journey. He faces another powerful foe, the Skeletal King, and defeats it, leveling up once again. As the episode nears its end, we see the destruction left in the wake of Jinwoo's battles. A building has been completely obliterated and emergency services are on the scene, speculating that it was an S-rank hunter fight that caused the destruction. With 25 floors still to go, Jinwoo pushes forward, collecting loot, including an earring from the 50th floor boss and a necklace from the Skeletal King. He's also secured 2 out of 3 ingredients needed to save his mother, but time is running out. He promises to return to finish what he started. The episode closes on a cliffhanger, leaving fans eagerly awaiting what comes next. Jinwoo stepped out of the instant dungeon, reflecting on how far he had come. He realized that the only thing he needed now was the purified blood of the Demon King. Understanding the importance of this task, he knew he must be completely prepared before going after it. As he checked his stats, he noticed a significant boost in his level from his recent adventure. Feeling it was time to stop hiding his true capabilities, Jinwoo decided to have his rank reassessed. The next day he made his way to the assessment center for his rank evaluation. Kikul, his faithful companion, happened to be there, scouting for new recruits. As he casually observed the hunters trying to guess their ranks, he spotted Jinwoo among them. Recognizing him immediately, Kikul contacted the center. Center dropped everything and hurried over. Meanwhile, Jinwoo waited for his turn and overheard a conversation between two nearby hunters. One was trying to calm the other, who seemed nervous about the test. The anxious hunter explained that he needed a higher rank. Another hunter reassured him that as long as his rank was above E, he'd be fine. When Jinwoo was called in for his test, the examiner assumed he knew the drill, so she instructed him to place his hand on the black crystal and wait. Jinwoo followed the instructions, but the machine malfunctioned. An error message popped up, and the examiner asked him to try again. She reset the machine multiple times, but nothing changed. The examiner's boss walked in, saw the situation, and realized the issue wasn't mechanical. The machine simply couldn't measure Jinwoo's magical power. His energy had surpassed what the device could handle, meaning it couldn't give an accurate reading. The examiner was taken aback and started to connect the dots. Jinwoo had officially become the 10th S-rank hunter in the country. Outside the evaluation center, Mr. Troy approached Jean Shul to ask about the investigation into the winged creature. Jean Shul explained that they were still comparing new and old samples, but more time was needed to determine the creature's origins. Mr. Troy then brought up the recent Red Gate incident, pointing out how the White Tiger Guild allowed a non-member to join the raid and even take down the boss. Curious, he asked Jean Shul if he knew who the mysterious person was. Jean Shul admitted he didn't know. Mr. Troy was somewhat disappointed but soon noticed the commotion inside the center. Intrigued, he and Jean Shul entered the building and learned about Jinwoo's rank reassessment. The examiner told Jinwoo he would need to return in 3 days for another reassessment with specialized gear. At that moment, Mr. Troy and Jean Shul entered the building. Sensing Jinwoo's overwhelming presence, Mr. Troy deduced that he was the one causing all the buzz. Eager to recruit him, Mr. Troy stepped forward to introduce himself, but Jinwoo simply walked past him without saying a word. The entire room was stunned by the unexpected snub. Mr. Troy, bewildered, asked Jean Shul if he had forgotten to properly introduce him. Jean Shul reassured him that he had, but moments later Becker arrived at the center, panting from running as fast as possible. Seeing him in such a hurry, Mr. Troy immediately put everything together. Jinwoo must have been the one who cleared the Red Gate. This realization only confirmed his belief that Jinwoo was truly extraordinary. Choosing not to linger, Mr. Troy left the building. That night, Jinwoo sat silently beside his mother, watching her sleep peacefully. Before leaving her room, he whispered, "Wait for me just a little longer." Outside, he encountered Jean Shul, who greeted him with an unexpected confession. Jean Shul admitted that Jinwoo had completely changed his perspective. As part of the surveillance division, Jean Shul's job was to monitor hunters and bring those who broke the law to justice. In the past, he was confident in his ability to judge people, but Jinwoo had shattered that confidence, proving him wrong. As Shul stopped him, saying there was someone who wanted to meet him. Moments later, Gani, the chairman of the Hunter Association, appeared. He introduced himself and congratulated Jinwoo on becoming an official S-rank hunter. Jinwoo looked confused, prompting Gani to explain that the reassessment was merely a formality. The moment the machine failed to measure Jinwoo's power, his S-rank status was essentially confirmed. Gani then extended an invitation to Jinwoo, offering him a prestigious position in the association. He explained that while the association managed a vast number of hunters, only a few were truly exceptional. Most hunters were drawn to guilds for fame and money. Even Jean Shul, one of their best experts, was only an A rank. The association was in dire need of someone more powerful. Gani proposed that Jinwoo join the association and transform it into the 6th major power, capable of holding the guilds in check. Jinwoo, intrigued by the offer, seriously considered it. Gani, the first S-rank hunter in the country, radiated overwhelming power, and Jinwoo realized that despite his age of over 80, Gani still carried the strength to rival him. However, Jinwoo refused the offer. Gani assumed that Jinwoo, like many others, was choosing money, but Jinwoo surprised him by stating otherwise. Jinwoo explained that he longed for battle and that the dungeon was where he truly belonged. Hearing this, Gani's heart raced, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He mused that if he were 10 years younger, he would have loved to fight alongside someone like Jinwoo. Realizing he couldn't sway Jinwoo's decision, Gani decided not to press further. Jinwoo thanked him for the offer and took his leave. As Jinwoo walked away, Gani lamented that even S-rank healers couldn't reverse aging, leaving him stuck with a body past its prime. He then instructed Jin Shul to cancel all of his appointments for the day, wanting time to himself to reflect. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was deep in thought. He knew that he had to become stronger quickly to save his mother. His sense of urgency kept him moving forward, leaving no room for idleness. Across the world, Don Su, still recovering in a hospital, was preparing for a rematch with Ilfuan. He was determined to find powerful artifacts to stand a chance against the magical beast. In Korea, Jinwoo searched online for artifacts but found nothing that caught his eye. Most items were too expensive, and he knew he needed to be fully prepared before taking on the Demon Castle. Jinwoo considered his sphere of avaricious, which could double his magical damage. He realized that some market items could boost magic power by 20% to 30%, but nothing could offer such a significant increase. He also noted that the sphere could fetch a high price if sold, but selling it raised two concerns. As an E-rank hunter, even participating in high-rank raids was off-limits. Just then he came across a job listing from the Hunters Guild, hiring miners for a large-scale expedition with no rank requirement. Surprised, he decided to take the opportunity. Meanwhile, Jin Shul reviewed Jinwoo's file and noticed how drastically different Jinwoo looked from 4 months ago. He questioned whether Jinwoo was a false ranger. However, Jinwoo reassured him, revealing that he had sustained multiple injuries while clearing low-rank dungeons. Jinwoo had become a hunter to fund his sick mother's care and pay for his sister's tuition. Impressed by Jinwoo's devotion, Jin Shul learned that Jinwoo had recently joined the Hunters Guild raid mission but was only a miner, not part of the assault team. Donnie, still puzzled, couldn't figure out Jinwoo's true motives. At the excavation site, the attack team, led by high-rank hunters, was the first to strike. One of them launched a fireball that wiped out a group of chupacabras in seconds. He was so strong that many tanks had to block his blast. After clearing everything except the boss, the team called it a day. Jinwoo quickly recognized him as a powerhouse and suppressed his presence to avoid being noticed. Behind the high-rank hunters was Jaha-in, the vice-master of the Hunter Guild, known as the Ballerina. Jinwoo was impressed by her aura, though she wasn't far behind. Sensing a strong presence, she assumed it was President Go, so Jinwoo activated full stealth mode to avoid detection. As the miners extracted mana stones, Jinwoo's attention turned to the boss room. He was eager to see it, wishing he could face the boss at least once. However, his E-rank status prompted whispers among the other miners, questioning whether he was really E-rank. Despite their comments, Jinwoo continued working with impressive strength, drawing attention. After some time, the leader called for a lunch break, and the others left the dungeon. But Jinwoo stayed behind, determined to finish his work before resting. When the leader invited him to join them, Jinwoo declined, focused on clearing his mining area. As the others exited, Jinwoo's expression sharpened with determination. He saw this as his chance to face the boss. As he approached the boss room, he couldn't suppress his excitement. Just before stepping in, he was stopped by Chahat. Her voice rang out sharply, asking, "What the hell are you doing here?" In the last episode, we saw Jinwoo preparing for a big battle with the boss. Just when it seemed like the fight was about to begin, Chahi suddenly appeared. He immediately put his weapon away, and Chahi, ever perceptive, noticed this and wondered if he had won in the first place. However, she decided not to press the matter further and simply told him to hurry up and leave. She warned him that if the boss found out they were there, the entire mining team would be in serious trouble. Jinwoo agreed to leave with Chahi's request, turning around to head back. But just as he was about to walk off, Chahi suddenly stopped him with a curious expression on her face. She had caught a strange, pleasant scent and couldn't help but approach him, her nose twitching as she sniffed the air. Chahi took a look at his ID card, and seeing that he was a low-rank hunter, she sighed and told him to head back. Jinwoo agreed, leaving Chahi to think to herself as she watched him walk away. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about him. Jinwoo rejoined his mining crew. His boss greeted him and mentioned that he'd heard Jinwoo had met Chahi. He said Jinwoo was pretty lucky since they were only able to see her from a distance. The boss went on to explain that Chahi gave up her own rest time to patrol and protect them, making her a rather selfless and cool person. Jinwoo, who had already begun to understand Chahi's actions, realized that her behavior towards him was likely due to the fact that she disliked the scent of hunters. Back at the mining site, Jinwoo's boss paid him for his work, praising him for his talents and how they had finished their tasks ahead of schedule. The boss commented that after many years of experience in the field, he hadn't met anyone with the same level of skill as Jinwoo in a long time. He was so impressed that he offered Jinwoo a permanent position with a generous salary, to which Jinwoo politely declined. He explained that he was only there for a short while and wasn't planning to stay longer. The boss, though a bit disappointed, still asked if Jinwoo could help out just one more day. The mining team had some big missions ahead, back-to-back A-rank and C-rank raid missions the next day. Jinwoo, already considering checking his rank after tomorrow, agreed to join them. After hearing that the Hunters Guild would also be involved, with the second assault team present, he thought it might be an interesting challenge. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a conversation was taking place about investigating Jinwoo. Someone mentioned that all information on him was sealed, and they'd never seen such a thing with a top-level hunter. Chahi, after hearing this, felt a little let down. She had her suspicions and felt that there was something more to Jinwoo than met the eye. She lay down on her bed, deep in thought, and couldn't help but admit that she was intrigued by him. The next morning, Jinwoo returned to the mining team, and everyone greeted him with a cheerful good morning. As he heard them, Jinwoo found himself reminiscing about his old party. He thought to himself how he hadn't felt this way in a while, how he was starting to feel more at home with this group. The day went by, and as they worked in the same rank dungeon, Jinwoo's skill continued to impress everyone. Even the boss couldn't help but marvel at how much easier the work was with Jinwoo around. Afterward, the team sat down to eat and rest, preparing for the A-rank dungeon ahead. It was right around this time that a man named Blackhead approached them, requesting help with a missing team member. One of their regular carriers had gone missing, and no one from the recovery team could help. Blackhead offered great pay, but no one seemed interested. The boss, knowing the risks of going into an A-rank dungeon, explained that low-rank adventurers like them weren't suited for such a task. Jinwoo boldly stated that he was still going to go, despite the risks. The team warned him that the dungeon was full of high-level magical beasts, but Jinwoo reassured them, saying he was powerful enough to handle it. When Blackhead asked about his rank and found out it was E, he hesitated for a moment but ultimately agreed to take Jinwoo along, figuring that the more help they had, the better. As they ventured deeper into the dungeon, Jinwoo's unease grew. The magical energy felt weaker than expected, but the atmosphere was still unsettling. It reminded him of the Red Gate, where terrible memories were formed. The eerie silence and strange tension made his anxiety rise. It felt as if something or someone was watching them. One of the girls in the group, noticing his discomfort, reassured him calmly. She explained that Blackhead, the team's captain, and the others were highly skilled, and as long as he stayed with them, he'd be fine. Despite her words, Jinwoo couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. They ventured further, they were met with a horde of dungeon jackals. Though easily dispatched by the team, something felt off about them. They wore strange ceremonial collars and didn't fight as fiercely as expected. This led Jinwoo to suspect someone had trained them like pets or hunting dogs, manipulating the dungeon in ways they couldn't fully understand. It raised more questions about what lay ahead. The group pressed forward through the cold, damp corridors. Soon their path was blocked by high orcs, massive, menacing creatures with strength far beyond their expectations. One of the orcs hurled a spear at Blackhead, knocking him backward. The power of the attack left the team in shock. They had underestimated the orcs and were now paying the price. The orcs were nearly indestructible, with magical resistance that made them almost immune to the team's spells. Forced to split into smaller groups to handle each orc, the team quickly realized this battle was unlike anything they had faced before. Jinwoo, always observant, sensed the rising tension. The orcs were relentless and the team's fatigue was beginning to show. He saw the battle starting to turn against them. Without revealing himself, Jinwoo decided to step in. Using his stealth abilities, he began picking off the orcs one by one. His movements were so quiet and smooth that no one noticed. His precise attacks weakened the monsters from the shadows. As the team continued fighting, they felt a subtle shift in the battle. Despite their exhaustion, things started to go more smoothly. It was as though the pressure had lifted, but none of them could explain why. Jinwoo stayed hidden, ensuring his intervention remained unnoticed. His quiet actions gave the team the edge they needed to defeat the remaining orcs. As the battle wound down, Blackhead turned to check on the team. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. The others nodded, but then the magic caster spoke up. She mentioned that during the battle she had sensed something strange. A shift in the air, a change in the energy surrounding them. The others agreed, though they couldn't pinpoint the cause. It felt as if their powers had been subtly enhanced. The magic caster hesitated before admitting she had sensed Jinwoo's stealth abilities. She realized his quiet intervention had been key to their survival. For now, they chose to act as if nothing had happened, not wanting to disrupt the balance. After regrouping, Blackhead decided to retreat. They had completed their task, but he knew they needed to leave before things worsened. Just as they started to exit, however, a powerful magical barrier appeared, trapping them inside. Panic spread as the team realized they were trapped. The magic caster tried to break the barrier, but her attempts were in vain. It wasn't just ordinary magic, they could feel the ominous presence of cursed magic. It became clear they had walked straight into a trap. As they realized this, an army of over 50 high orcs emerged, blocking their path. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Blackhead stepped forward, determined to face them. His team followed, ready for battle. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the orc ranks, an orc sorcerer who spoke first in an unintelligible language. After some strange motions, he switched to perfect human speech, introducing himself as Karl Galgon. He demanded they follow him and revealed he had sealed off the entrance to trap them. With a smirk, he gave them an ultimatum: face him or be slaughtered by his orc soldiers. Blackhead, understanding the trap, agreed to meet him face to face, aware of the danger. As they moved forward, Blackhead shared his plan with Jinwoo. The strategy was simple. Once they reached the orc leader, they would create a distraction to draw attention away from the barrier, giving Jinwoo a chance to escape and alert the main team for reinforcements. Jinwoo voiced his concerns, thinking Blackhead and the team were signing their own death warrants. Jinwoo's resolve was further tested when a girl from the team handed him a diary, asking him to deliver it to her family if something went wrong. She urged him to focus on surviving, while they would finish the mission no matter the cost. Outside the dungeon, Chaha began searching for him. She was worried he had abandoned the team. Talking to a mining boss, Chaha learned that Jinwoo had entered the dungeon as a porter. She couldn't understand why he would risk his life like that. Inside the dungeon, Jinwoo and his team arrived at a massive throne room, where Karl Galgon and his orc army awaited them. The sorcerer coldly informed them that they could either face him or be wiped out by his soldiers. With no choice but to move forward, Blackhead prepared to confront the sorcerer, knowing that their only chance to complete the mission was to defeat him. She said she was heading into the portal, and the chief immediately asked if she wanted backup, but she casually told him to chill. It was personal business, nothing more. However, in the heat of the moment, she realized she had forgotten her sword. Slightly embarrassed, she asked if anyone had a spare weapon. The chief, of course, handed her a rock pickaxe, which was far from the ideal combat weapon she had hoped for. Not exactly the sword or spear she was expecting. She raised an eyebrow at it and asked, "You got anything better? Maybe a sword? A spear?" Meanwhile, inside the boss room, the atmosphere was thick with tension, the kind that made everyone's skin crawl. The squad, already trembling from the sight of the Orc King's intimidating presence, knew that if even a fraction of the superior orcs were unleashed, the entire city could be obliterated in mere minutes. It was clear that they had to stop the bond from being broken, but even the 4 guards surrounding the Orc King looked like nightmares come to life, towering figures whose very gaze sent chills down your spine. The soldiers, too frightened to act, were just waiting for the right moment to strike. The Orc King, not one to waste time, removed his mask and glanced down at the humans. "Are you all afraid of me?" He asked, clearly relishing the fear that swirled in the room. Did he really need an answer? Judging by the state of the soldiers, who looked like they might soil themselves at any given moment, it was abundantly clear what the answer was. Being no other option, the leader of the group took it upon himself to charge in alone. But before he could get even a few steps, the Orc King using gravity magic to repeatedly slam the man's head into the floor, playing a cruel game of catch with his skull. Just when the Orc King was about to end him, someone stepped forward to intervene. That someone was Jinwoo. Calm and composed, Jinwoo, his expression unbothered, replied that he had never felt an energy quite like this before. The Orc King, sensing his own power surging, seemed to be getting cocky. But Jinwoo, unfazed, hit him with the chilling line, "Oh yeah, this fight's going to be brutal, just for you guys." With that, Jinwoo summoned his shadow army, stronger than ever before. Outside the portal, Inspector Jinchul arrived in his lavish limo, and the miners were utterly confused. One of them, a slick-back hair guy, was now demanding to know why Jinwoo had spent 2 full days working as a miner. The chief, realizing the jig was up, confirmed that Jinwoo had volunteered as a tech to join the attack squad. The inspector, still in disbelief, wondered what kind of person Jinwoo really was. He then asked the chief if Jinwoo had killed anyone, and Jinchul ominously replied, "We'll find out in tomorrow's headlines." Suddenly, a massive explosion of energy erupted from the portal, nearly flattening everyone nearby. Inside, Cha Hayan was struggling to understand how Ki-hun's team managed to down so many superior orcs. But if the energy emanating from the boss was any indication, none of them were making it out alive. Back in the boss room, the Orc King mocked Jin Woo, laughing at the idea of Jin Woo's wimpy soldiers taking on his mighty army. He activated Monarch's domain, boosting his shadow soldiers' strength by 50%. This was no ordinary army. The mages, watching in stunned silence, could barely comprehend the sheer power at play. Iron, undeterred, he just unleashed his full might, hammering the orcs into oblivion. Igris was out there too, cutting through 30 orcs in a blink of an eye. But none of them could hold a candle to the real powerhouse, Jin Woo himself. He was fighting as though it was child's play, showing no mercy as he tore through orcs like they were nothing. But just as he thought he had the upper hand, the Orc King dropped the Dragonfire Anthem, a devastating spell that wiped out almost all of Jin Woo's shadow soldiers in a single attack. The Orc King, growing desperate, summoned a massive iceberg and dropped it on Jin Woo. But before Jin Woo could react, he had already absorbed a full magic combo from the boss. The Orc King, seeing the shadows regrowing again and again, screamed that he would continue to obliterate them until Jin Woo's mana ran dry. Meanwhile, the weaklings were scrambling for cover to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. With all that magic flying around, Jin Woo was finding it difficult to get close enough to land a decisive blow on the Orc King. Outside, the association's members quickly realized the portal was much stronger than anticipated. Reinforcements were ordered, and they began to move in. Inside, the Orc King was almost laughing at Jin Woo, thinking he was on the verge of running out of mana. But unlike the last time in his class change quest, Jin Woo now had access to infinite mana potions. That's when things took a drastic turn for the better. Jin Woo began extracting the shadows from the fallen superior orcs, absorbing their strength and adding them to his ever-growing army. He then locked eyes with the Orc King and said, "You're next, buddy." The Orc King was momentarily stunned, his brain freezing up as the name Shadow Monarch hit him like a thunderclap. Meanwhile, at the Hunters Guild HQ, Chairman Choi, who had been keeping tabs on the situation, thought the task was well within Ki-hun's team's capabilities, but just to be sure, he ordered his assistant to gather the strongest hunters in the guild. If necessary, they'd ask for help from other guilds. Back inside the portal, the Orc King's generals charged into the fray. But they were no match for Jin Woo's generals. Iron easily overwhelmed the first orc, while Igris fought with such speed and precision that he had to drop his sword, only for it to zip back into his hands in a blur. Tank, not to be left out, smashed an orc so hard it practically vanished. The Orc King, infuriated, activated the Hymn of Agony, a curse that paralyzed, blinded, and trapped everyone in place. He unleashed a torrent of magic on Jin Woo, but it shattered effortlessly against his defenses. Jin Woo summoned his mages to obliterate the annoying iceberg that had been stalling him, and with the power of the Orb of Avarice, they became even more formidable. A fireball pierced through the Orc King's shield and exploded directly in his face, infuriating him even further. Cha, who had finally made her way into the midst of the chaos, was stunned by the sheer number of soldiers Jin Woo had summoned. She ran up to the attack squad asking, "What the hell is going on here?" Even they couldn't provide an answer. Meanwhile, the Orc King was done playing games. With an enraged roar, he combined 300 spells into one devastating attack and vowed to crush Jin Woo like an insect. He stomped down with the force of a colossal titan, launched a massive fireball, then followed it up with 50 more. They wiped out both Jin Woo's shadow soldiers and the superior orcs. With a malicious grin, the Orc King taunted, "Are you starting to regret it, little human?" But before the words had even fully left his mouth, Jin Woo was already on top of him, driving a dagger straight into his eye. Turning into a giant made him a bigger, more vulnerable target, and Jin Woo wasted no time proving that even a lone mage without his guards was no match for an assassin-type hunter. He swiftly summoned his ruler's hand to grab chains, binding the boss before hurling him around with ease, leaving the monstrous adversary reeling. Meanwhile, Jin Woo's incredible display caught the attention of Cha, who had come to lend support, but upon witnessing the sheer power unleashed, she realized Jin Woo no longer needed help. Even the head of surveillance seemed to acknowledge his power, leaving Cha wondering just how formidable he truly was. She asked Jin Woo what he thought of him, but he merely shrugged, admitting that he didn't know him that well. With the battle reaching its climax, Jin Woo coolly told the boss that his fate was sealed the moment his guards fell. The boss snarled in defiance, but it was too late. Jin Woo called upon the spirits of the fallen to finish him off. As the boss, in his final moments, saw his former generals end his life, Jin Woo emerged victorious, leveling up and preparing to extract the boss's soul. The crowd was left stunned as he did so, and when he was done, Jinwoo joked that the boss would be much more docile now as a shadow. He named the soul Tusk, recognizing the elite knight rank it held, a classification he'd never encountered before. The fallen orcs proved to be a significant gain. As Jinwoo finished his extraction, he realized he hadn't noticed the inspector standing nearby. The hunters quickly began clamoring for answers, but the chief stepped in to protect Jinwoo, declaring his situation top secret. They were told to keep quiet about what they'd seen, explaining that Jinwoo had unleashed the power of an S-rank hunter solely to protect them. His team escorted him out, and before he left, Jinwoo was given heartfelt thanks from his comrades. As he prepared to depart, Cha tried to catch up, but her nervousness got the better of her when a mage questioned why she was holding a pickaxe. Cha turned bright red and nervously asked if she looked weird with it. Back to the guild, where Chairman Choi expressed amazement at Jinwoo's power. He asked his assistant to compare his strength to Jinwoo's, and they both realized Jinwoo's abilities surpassed anything they had imagined. Choi acknowledged that his title of Ultimate Hunter might now be a bit of a joke, and determined to recruit Jinwoo, he set his sights on bringing him into the fold. Later, Jinwoo met up with Leo, asking how things had gone with the guild master, and the narrative shifted toward the Hunter Association, where the realization of Jinwoo's immense strength was beginning to sink in for everyone who witnessed his display. The scene opens with the swarming crowd of reporters, eagerly waiting at the Hunter Association's rank evaluation building. They're buzzing with excitement over Lee Min-sung, who has been flexing about his upcoming rank as an A-rank hunter. Choi and Beck, who make their entrance into the scene. The reporters assume they're there to recruit him, but Beck quickly brushes off the notion, claiming he's never heard of the guy. Choi, on the other hand, reveals that Min-sung has already signed with the Fiend Guild. Beck brings up the recent A-rank dungeon that nearly escalated into an S-rank crisis, with Choi shrugging it off as trivial compared to the White Tiger Guild's disastrous situation at the Red Gate. They continue discussing Jinwoo's role in resolving the issue, both men eager to recruit him, sparking a rivalry between them. Just as tensions rise, a voice interrupts, asking if they're squabbling over Lee Min-sung, which they both vehemently deny. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, who's just arrived for his own reassessment, wonders what all the commotion is about. As Min-sung continues his press conference, confidently announcing his decision to join the Fiend Guild, he declares that he already knows he'll be an A-rank hunter. With an air of arrogance, he insists that his scandals will soon be forgotten, and he's ready to fight magic beasts. Meanwhile, Jinwoo tries to make his way into the building, only to be stopped by Min-sung's guards, who refuse him entry until the press conference concludes. Just as things are about to get more chaotic, Gunny bursts in, introducing Jinwoo as his guest and scolding the press conference for its timing. He pushes past the stunned Min-sung and Jinwoo enters the building, his presence now the new center of attention. Min-sung, still seething with frustration, tries to force his way into the association, only to be intercepted by Jinchul, who tells him to wait as other reassessments are already in progress. Meanwhile, inside the evaluation room, Jinwoo is greeted by Choi and Beck, who are anxiously waiting for his reassessment. The assessors ask Jinwoo to demonstrate his abilities, and he casually summons a shadow soldier. The assessors, unimpressed, ask if that's his only ability, to which Jinwoo replies that it's just the beginning. With a confident smirk, he summons his entire army of shadow soldiers, stunning everyone in the room. Choi and Beck are in awe, realizing that Jinwoo's power might surpass even their own. The evaluation concludes, and Jinwoo is granted the prestigious S-rank hunter title. Outside, Min-sung's press conference is all but forgotten as the media shifts its focus to Jinwoo, who leaves the building to be bombarded with flashing cameras. Meanwhile, back at the association, both Choi and Beck are eager to recruit Jinwoo, but he walks past them uninterested, and insists he has other matters to attend to. As Jinwoo leaves, reporters swarm him, their cameras flashing wildly. Song and Gina, watching the news, are shocked to learn that Jinwoo is now an S-rank hunter. The entire city buzzes with disbelief, as Jinwoo's new status becomes headline news. While the media surrounds Jinwoo, his father has a conversation with Leo, expressing his disappointment that Leo failed to convince Jinwoo to join their guild. Leo, however, remains resolute, recalling Jinwoo's refusal to join any organization at this point in his journey. Jinwoo wants to grow stronger independently, believing that joining a guild would only slow him down. As the conversation heats up, Leo is determined to follow Jinwoo, no matter the cost, even if it means defying his father's wishes. Back at the scene, Beck offers to escort Jinwoo home to shield him from the press, but Jinwoo declines, slipping past the reporters with impressive speed. Choi is left stunned by Jinwoo's physical prowess, while Beck marvels at how much stronger Jinwoo has become. As Jinwoo vanishes into the shadows, it's clear that he's ready to take on the next phase of his journey, prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead, and with a new determination to acquire the equipment he needs for his upcoming quests, particularly the Demon Castle. Jinwoo visits the hunter auction to purchase equipment. He looks at a cloak and a ring, but when he asks about the price, he's shocked by how expensive they are. Hoping for a discount, he asks if the price can be lowered, but the seller refuses. Instead, the seller jokingly offers a challenge. If Jinwoo can break the reinforced magic glass, he can take any item for free. Jinwoo, ready for the challenge, gathers his strength to strike, but just as he's about to, the seller panics and admits he was joking. Embarrassed, Jinwoo moves on to look at other items. Jinwoo examines a dagger, but its price is shockingly high. He shows the seller his own dagger and asks how much it would be worth. The seller estimates it at no less than 100 million gold, a number that leaves Jinwoo speechless. He originally bought it for just 2.8 million gold coins. This makes him realize that the items from the system store are far more valuable in the real world. Later, as he leaves, he decides not to sell the Spear of Avarice after all. Meanwhile, at the White Tiger Guild, Beck reflects on Jinwoo's immense strength and wonders if he's a special kind of hunter who can keep growing stronger indefinitely. He senses something unique about Jinwoo, a feeling that grows stronger as he contemplates the implications of his abilities. Beck isn't the only one who's intrigued by Jinwoo. At home, Jinwoo's sister, Jin-na, is relieved that no reporters are around anymore, allowing her to go back to school in peace. She teases Jinwoo about being on TV, but he laughs it off, casually mentioning that he'll be gone for a week starting tomorrow. She's curious and asks why just as Leo arrives at the door. Leo introduces himself as Jinwoo's right-hand man, and Jinwoo explains that Leo will be working with him for the next week. Though Leo is confused at first, he quickly agrees and the two head out. That night, Jinwoo checks on Jin-na, and after ensuring her safety, he summons his shadow soldiers to guard her. However, he notices that one of them is missing. As he recalls, he had accidentally destroyed one earlier. He assigns 3 remaining soldiers to protect Jin-na, and then moves to the rooftop. There, he summons his entire shadow army to patrol the area, pondering if he's starting to help society in his own way. Meanwhile, a flying magic beast soars across the city, its wings beating silently in the sky. Jinwoo, equipped with his water-based ring and wind-based cape, heads into the demon castle. A system message appears instructing him to collect demon souls, including the soul of the demon monarch, Baron. The reward is a shadow exchange rune stone. Excited by the prospect of this reward, Jinwoo teleports to the 76th floor where he left off. Meanwhile, at home, Jinwoo's father collapses unexpectedly, and his mother is horrified. Back in the demon castle, Jinwoo summons Fong and hands him the Spear of Avarice. Fong unleashes a fire attack that reduces a powerful demon to ashes in a single blow, impressing Jinwoo. He decides to keep the spear with Fong for now, realizing the power at his disposal. As Jinwoo continues to battle his way through the castle, doctors explain that he has contracted an illness known as eternal slumber due to low magic resistance. This leaves Jinwoo's family in a state of shock as they begin to wonder if Jinwoo's work as a hunter has anything to do with it. He organizes his shadow soldiers into 6 teams, each assigned to different tasks. His strategy is to eliminate enemies quickly, although he knows this means missing out on other loot. Progress is slower than expected, and after 2 days on the 80th floor, Jinwoo notices a significant drop in his MP, signaling that something is wrong. His soldiers are being wiped out and his teams are under attack. He quickly teleports to the location of his high orc team and finds that they're being overrun. As Jinwoo analyzes the situation, he senses something is off. The enemy's strength is formidable, but their strategy is even more alarming. He decides it's time to intervene and takes action, saving one of his teams from a group of demons. He's determined to figure out who's behind these attacks, knowing that he's facing an opponent unlike any other. Jinwoo now was on the verge of ending her life in a brutal battle. As he raised his weapon to deliver the final blow, she suddenly surrendered, her voice cutting through the chaos. To his astonishment, the warrior was a woman. Removing her helmet, she revealed her features and begged for mercy. She insisted that as a knight, it was her sacred duty to protect her lord at all costs. She believed that if she survived, her people would continue to thrive. Unmoved, he began to turn away, but just as he did, she lunged at him once more, Before her strike could land, Fang intervened, shielding Jin Woo from the attack. Confused, Jin Woo demanded to know her true intentions. In a panic, the elf begged for her life, vowing to do anything he asked. She then revealed that her family held the entry permit and that if Jin Woo spared her, she would lead him to it. She also claimed to know the locations of every permit on the upper floors and offered to provide that information if he guaranteed her family's safety. Jin Woo soon realized that her family had deliberately hidden the permits. Intrigued, Jin Woo demanded to know who they really were. Meanwhile, far away on a desolate island, a sinister flying ant had infiltrated the area, leaving devastation in its wake. Back at the demon castle, the elf introduced herself as Ezile, the eldest daughter of the Radier family. Jin Woo, however, was far more interested in the system she served. Pressing her for answers, he asked if she had ever been tormented by voices commanding her to kill humans. She denied it but admitted to hearing a different, more ominous directive, one to protect the space they occupied. She explained that her people had come from the demon realm. Jin Woo's curiosity deepened, and he asked what they were preparing for. Ezile froze, suddenly acting mechanically. She shared that they had been preparing for war against a formidable enemy, one so powerful that the demons had to unite to even stand a chance. However, before she could provide further details, an error message appeared, and Ezile fainted in Jin Woo's arms. Left without answers, meanwhile, back at the Hunter Association, the news of the devastating attack on the Japanese outlying islands reached them. The assault had resulted in 294 casualties, with numerous hunters also suffering heavy losses. Gunny warned that if the flying ants developed stronger flight capabilities, they could easily reach the southern part of the country, potentially devastating it. The raid on Jeju Island was now officially underway, and the stakes had never been higher. Back at the castle, Ezile, having recovered, led Jin Woo to her family's home. Upon their arrival, her father initially regarded Jin Woo with suspicion, not recognizing him at first. However, when he realized who Jin Woo was, the one who had defeated Vulcan and Métis, his demeanor shifted. Reluctantly, he handed over the entry permit, realizing that he could no longer oppose the powerful invader standing before him. But Jin Woo didn't stop there. He asked to borrow Ezile, explaining that she knew the locations of the other permits. After some hesitation and reassurances from Jin Woo that her safety was guaranteed, her father reluctantly agreed, and Ezile was sent with him. Elsewhere, scientists were busy dissecting the flying ant, examining its every detail with intense scrutiny. At the castle, Jin Woo continued his ascent through the floors and found himself on the 89th floor. There he noticed that both Igris and Tank had leveled up. One had earned the title of Elite Knight, while the other remained a knight. Jin Woo mused that one of them now rivaled the strength of an S-ranked adventurer, while the other was comparable to a rank A adventurer. Meanwhile, Ezile had prepared an array of gifts for the nobles on the higher floors, hoping to use them as bribes in exchange for permits. However, Jin Woo dismissed the need for such offerings, stating that permits should be obtained through skill, not bribery. Ezile warned him that the floors above level 9 were controlled by high-ranking nobles who were far stronger than the weaker enemies he had faced so far. Attaining permits through mere conversation would be impossible. Jin Woo bluntly agreed, remarking that no one would bother talking to someone they considered weak and promised that he would elevate her family to become the most powerful in this realm. Ezile, still curious, asked him why he spared her family. Jin Woo replied without hesitation, "Because I like you," leaving her stunned, blushing, and embarrassed. Together they ascended to the 90th floor. At this point, Jin Woo faced stronger monsters and realized that Ezile was right. Meanwhile, back at the Hunter Guild, Mr. Choi and Chaha received an urgent call for the 4th raid on Jeju Island. All the S-rank hunters in the country had been mobilized, and Chaha wondered if this meant Jin Woo would be involved as well. Mr. Choi informed her that they would be cooperating with Japan, as the first flying ants had also been threatening that region. Chaha asked when the raid would commence, but no exact time was given. Mr. Choi believed it would start soon, as Japan's ultra-large guild was scheduled to arrive later today to discuss the situation. Meanwhile, Jin Woo reached the 100th floor of the demon castle. As he stepped onto the floor, he noticed something ominous overhead, a wyvern large and menacing circling in the sky. To his horror, the demon lord Baron himself stepped off the creature's back, radiating an overwhelming aura that seemed to distort the air. The pressure from Baron's presence was immediate. His dark armor gleamed like obsidian, and his cold eyes locked onto Jin Woo. Baron took to the air again, summoning a swarm of demons, dark, twisted creatures that charged at Jin Woo with bloodlust in their eyes. Ezile, standing beside him, froze in fear at the sight of the swarm and Baron's terrifying presence in the air. Her heart raced, but Jin Woo, ever calm, quickly summoned his army, now empowered by his monarch's domain. Shadows of his forces surged forward, easily overpowering the demons. Despite their victory, Ezile's unease remained. "Can you really defeat him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jin Woo remained focused. But before he could make his next move, Baron unleashed a devastating lightning storm. The strike tore through his army, decimating a large portion of his forces. Jin Woo felt his mana deplete rapidly as the storm raged on. Shielding Ezile from a bolt of lightning, he absorbed the brunt of the attack, the lightning paralyzing his muscles and draining his energy with every hit. Reacting swiftly, Jin Woo activated his dash and stealth skills, moving with incredible speed toward Baron. However, Baron sensed his every move, blocking his charge with ease. Jin Woo's stealth failed as Baron's aura pierced through his invisibility. Before he could react, Baron hurled him to the ground with Baron unleashed a homing lightning breath. The blast was blinding, but Fang intervened, shielding Jin Woo from the attack. In one brutal motion, he decapitated the creature, causing it to crash violently to the ground. Baron was temporarily grounded without his mount. Jin Woo seized the opportunity, focusing on Baron. The clash between his forces and the demon lord grew fiercer, but Baron's overwhelming strength showed no sign of waning. In a brutal exchange, Baron grabbed Jin Woo by the head, threatening to crush him. Jin Woo struggled, but Baron's grip was unyielding. Just as Baron raised his sword for the final blow, Igris intervened with a mighty roar. He intercepted the strike. In one final effort, he unleashed another lightning breath, tearing through Jin Woo's forces. Jin Woo's mana was dangerously low, and the battle was draining him. Baron summoned his blades, engaging Jin Woo in a high-speed duel. They traded blows, but Baron's strength began to overwhelm Jin Woo. The demon lord disarmed him, leaving Jin Woo vulnerable. At the critical moment, Ezile threw her blade, distracting Baron just long enough for Jin Woo to summon the last of his strength. With a roar, Jin Woo ripped off Baron's arms, disarming him. Baron tried one last lightning breath, but Jin Woo was ready. With a powerful uppercut, he struck Baron square in the chest, sending a shockwave through the battlefield as the demon lord's head was blasted from his body. The battle was over. Jin Woo stood victorious, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. He collected Baron's soul, completing his soul collection quest. With the demon lord's defeat, his path forward was clear. He turned to Ezile. "Go," he said firmly. "Tell your father that the Radairu family is destined to rise to the top of the tower." Jin Woo now was on the verge of ending her life in a brutal battle. As he raised his weapon to deliver the final blow, she suddenly surrendered, her voice cutting through the chaos. To his astonishment, the warrior was a woman. Removing her helmet, she revealed her features and begged for mercy. She insisted that as a knight, it was her sacred duty to protect her lord at all costs. She believed that if she survived, her people would continue to thrive. Unmoved, he began to turn away, but just as he did, she lunged at him once more. Before her strike could land, Fang intervened, shielding Jin Woo from the attack. Confused, Jin Woo demanded to know her true intentions. In a panic, the elf begged for her life, vowing to do anything he asked. She then revealed that her family held the entry permit and that if Jin Woo spared her, she would lead him to it. She also claimed to know the locations of every permit on the upper floors and offered to provide that information if he guaranteed her family's safety. Jin Woo soon realized that her family had deliberately hidden the permits. Intrigued, Jin Woo demanded to know who they really were. Meanwhile, far away on a desolate island, a sinister flying ant had infiltrated the area, leaving devastation in its wake. Back at the demon castle, the elf introduced herself as Ezile, the eldest daughter of the Radier family. Jin Woo, however, was far more interested in the system she served. Pressing her for answers, he asked if she had ever been tormented by voices commanding her to kill humans. She denied it but admitted to hearing a different, more ominous directive, one to protect the space they occupied. She explained that her people had come from the demon realm. Jin Woo's curiosity deepened, and he asked what they were preparing for. Ezile froze, suddenly acting mechanically. She shared that they had been preparing for war against a formidable enemy, one so powerful that the demons had to unite to even stand a chance. However, before she could provide further details, an error message appeared, and Ezile fainted in Jin Woo's arms. Left without answers, meanwhile, back at the Hunter Association, the news of the devastating attack on the Japanese outlying islands reached them. The assault had resulted in 294 casualties, with numerous hunters also suffering heavy losses. Gunny warned that if the flying ants developed stronger flight capabilities, they could easily reach the southern part of the country, potentially devastating it. The raid on Juju Island was now officially underway, and the stakes had never been higher. Back at the castle, Ezile, having recovered, led Jin Woo to her family's home. Upon their arrival, her father initially regarded Jin Woo with suspicion, not recognizing him at first. However, when he realized who Jin Woo was, the one who had defeated Vulcan and Métis, his demeanor shifted. Reluctantly, he handed over the entry permit, realizing that he could no longer oppose the powerful invader standing before him. But Jin Woo didn't stop there. He asked to borrow Ezile, explaining that she knew the locations of the other permits. After some hesitation and reassurances from Jin Woo that her safety was guaranteed, her father reluctantly agreed, and Ezile was sent with him. Elsewhere, scientists were busy dissecting the flying ant, examining its every detail with intense scrutiny. At the castle, Jin Woo continued his ascent through the floors and found himself on the 89th floor. There he noticed that both Igris and Tank had leveled up. One had earned the title of Elite Knight, while the other remained a knight. Jin Woo mused that one of them now rivaled the strength of an S-ranked adventurer, while the other was comparable to a rank A adventurer. Meanwhile, Ezile had prepared an array of gifts for the nobles on the higher floors, hoping to use them as bribes in exchange for permits. However, Jin Woo dismissed the need for such offerings, stating that permits should be obtained through skill, not bribery. Ezile warned him that the floors above level 9 were controlled by high-ranking nobles who were far stronger than the weaker enemies he had faced so far. Attaining permits through mere conversation would be impossible. Jin Woo bluntly agreed, remarking that no one would bother talking to someone they considered weak, and promised that he would elevate her family to become the most powerful in this realm. Ezile, still curious, asked him why he spared her family. Jin Woo replied without hesitation, "Because I like you," leaving her stunned, blushing, and embarrassed. Together they ascended to the 90th floor. At this point, Jin Woo faced stronger monsters and realized that Ezile was right. Meanwhile, back at the Hunter Guild, Mr. Choi and Chaha received an urgent call for the 4th raid on Juju Island. All the S-rank hunters in the country had been mobilized, and Chaha wondered if this meant Jin Woo would be involved as well. Mr. Choi informed her that they would be cooperating with Japan, as the first flying ants had also been threatening that region. Chaha asked when the raid would commence, but no exact time was given. Mr. Choi believed it would start soon, as Japan's ultra-large guild was scheduled to arrive later today to discuss the situation. Meanwhile, Jin Woo reached the 100th floor of the Demon Castle. As he stepped onto the floor, he noticed something ominous overhead, a wyvern large and menacing circling in the sky. To his horror, the Demon Lord Baron himself stepped off the creature's back, radiating an overwhelming aura that seemed to distort the air. The pressure from Baron's presence was immediate. His dark armor gleamed like obsidian, and his cold eyes locked onto Jin Woo. Baron took to the air again, summoning a swarm of demons, dark, twisted creatures that charged at Jin Woo with bloodlust in their eyes. Ezile, standing beside him, froze in fear at the sight of the swarm and Baron's terrifying presence in the air. Her heart raced, but Jin Woo, ever calm, quickly summoned his army, now empowered by his monarch's domain. Shadows of his forces surged forward, easily overpowering the demons. Despite their victory, Ezile's unease remained. "Can you really defeat him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jin Woo remained focused. But before he could make his next move, Baron unleashed a devastating lightning storm. The strike tore through his army, decimating a large portion of his forces. Jin Woo felt his mana deplete rapidly as the storm raged on. Shielding Ezile from a bolt of lightning, he absorbed the brunt of the attack, the lightning paralyzing his muscles and draining his energy with every hit. Reacting swiftly, Jin Woo activated his dash and stealth skills, moving with incredible speed toward Baron. However, Baron sensed his every move, blocking his charge with ease. Jin Woo's stealth failed as Baron's aura pierced through his invisibility. Before he could react, Baron hurled him to the ground with Baron unleashed a homing lightning breath. The blast was blinding, but Fang intervened, shielding Jin Woo from the attack. In one brutal motion, he decapitated the creature, causing it to crash violently to the ground. Baron was temporarily grounded without his mount. Jin Woo seized the opportunity, focusing on Baron. The clash between his forces and the Demon Lord grew fiercer, but Baron's overwhelming strength showed no sign of waning. In a brutal exchange, Baron grabbed Jin Woo by the head, threatening to crush him. Jin Woo struggled, but Baron's grip was unyielding. Just as Baron raised his sword for the final blow, Igris intervened with a mighty roar. He intercepted the strike. In one final effort he unleashed another lightning breath, tearing through Jin Woo's forces. Jin Woo's mana was dangerously low, and the battle was draining him. Baron summoned his blades, engaging Jin Woo in a high-speed duel. They traded blows, but Baron's strength began to overwhelm Jin Woo. The Demon Lord disarmed him, leaving Jin Woo vulnerable. At the critical moment, Ezile threw her blade, distracting Baron just long enough for Jin Woo to summon the last of his strength. With a roar, Jin Woo ripped off Baron's arms, disarming him. Baron tried one last lightning breath, but Jin Woo was ready. With a powerful uppercut, he struck Baron square in the chest, sending a shockwave through the battlefield as the Demon Lord's head was blasted from his body. The battle was over. Jin Woo stood victorious, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. He collected Baron's soul, completing his soul collection quest. With the Demon Lord's defeat, his path forward was clear. He turned to Ezile. "Go," he said firmly. "Tell your father that the Radairu family is destined to rise to the top of the tower."